This one is going to be advanced Revit development, which we're going to create and edit existing families in order to create depth in a project. So let's see what we're going to go over today. Alright, so today, whenever you're watching it, this is what we're going to do. We're going to understand how families work and why we use them, view some basic, intermediate, and advanced examples. What does parametric actually mean, and when should I make a family parametric?
Which is very important.
Yeah, create a parametric family, a somewhat parametric family, I should add, not fully parametric. And then use your existing skills with form creation and your new family understanding skills to edit pre-existing families or components, and then create a family from scratch. Alright, so let's start knocking these questions off.
So it's essentially 3 different types of families here. There's one straight from scratch, and then there's the ones built off of other families, and then there's the more complex parametric families. So we're going to try to clearly explain all the 3 different ones and then go over them step by step for each one. So
okay, the first thing is how do families work. So we've used the word families a ton all throughout these sessions, and we kind of get question marks for the first 4 sessions, and then people kind of start to understand what's going on. But I mean, basically a family's everything without it being everything. A family, the easiest way to explain it is like furniture systems, toilets, commodes, baths, shower, anything like that. Anything that takes up space that's not really a wall is a family, but walls are parametric, so they're just not families.
Yeah, they're technically families, but they're just not the type of families you can create. They're system families, which are the ones that come with Revit that you can't really change or edit except through their own properties dialog box, and those include walls, floors, roofs, things like that. But then there's also the other families, which are inside of the families library, where you can change and actually edit them all from scratch, edit them, the modeling of them and everything, versus walls and roof, which are sort of integrated in the program itself.
So the families we're going to create are basically objects, furniture systems or something like that. That's what I focus on mainly. If you can understand that, you can start to understand anything. So the bigger question though is, what does parametric actually mean, and when should you make a family parametric? Parametric is literally giving a family that you've created, let's say a table, the ability to be different sizes, widths, add materials to it. The word parameter means to basically add a layer of depth to it. It's kind of like a question. Do you want the finish to be brown instead of white, or do you want it to be wood instead of glass? And you have that ability to do that within the project without having to go back and change the material in the family every single time. And I guess an even harder question is, when should you make it parametric? It's actually good practice to always kind of make them parametric, because you end up putting yourself in more of a bind if you don't put any parametric ties to the family, and then you go back and you want to edit it. You're kind of screwed. A family that's purely parametric can do whatever you want to. It can change height, depth, width, thickness, materials, multiple materials. It has maybe math, calculus based equations in it that make it do even more complex stuff. The one we're going to do, the first one, which we're just going to do a simple cube to let you understand what parameters are, that one's going to be fully parametric. But the one at the end will be semi-parametric, meaning it has parametric ties, but they're not always going to work right, because you can't really make a chair into a much larger chair, because it kind of looks like a sofa then. So you don't want to do that. But at the same time, you don't want to just create this one-off product that nobody else can use and you can barely use it. So I'll show you how to add some quick parameters.
Basically, we call it parametric if it has the ability to change.
Yeah.
So if you can change the materials or change the size of the family, then it becomes parametric. Versus, say, a one-off chair, which has no different sizes, has no different finishes. It just is a wooden chair. It can't really change. That would be a sort of a non-parametric family. But then the same table, which can have different sizes and different finishes, like glass versus wood, or different heights or different depths, that would be a parametric family. So that's sort of the difference there.
All right, so let's look at some. We're going to look at some basic, intermediate, and advanced examples right now. So the first one would be a basic family. This one's one that I would say is semi-parametric. You can't change its size. You can't change its depth. You can change like the arm widths on this chair, but you can. The only thing parametric about it really is that you can change the fabric, the materials. So the material separate from the pillow separate from the actual seat material. Everything's independent, or you can do them together, whatever. That's a simple one. 30 minutes in the computer, you're done. The next one would be a medium one. This is actually a desk, and it doesn't seem maybe as complex as the last one, but this desk can turn into a bunch of other desks. So if this desk isn't wide enough, tall enough, maybe it's too tall, maybe you want the bars to be thicker, this one can change all that. The last one, which would be an advanced example, is it's just a one part of a stair. It's got the stringer with the support for the tread, and it has the baluster. It has everything. But this can be used in conjunction with a little calculus to do stuff like this, to where you're using literally one unit to make a stair that's multiple units in length with certain angles and stuff. So we're not going to go over that, but you could do all this with advanced families.
But you can get the idea from what we're going to explain today of how you could do something similar to this.
Yeah, so do you have to create your own families from scratch every time? No, you don't. Let's go ahead and look at a few websites. We basically have 3 websites on the internet. There's 2 big ones, and then there's ours. The first one is Autodesk Seek. Autodesk develops a ton of products. It's not actually Autodesk. And it's funny because when we botched up the first recording, there was a chair here that I had made, and now on the website there's a desk that I had made, which kind of looks like the one I just showed you in the PowerPoint. That's because I did it with the last company I was at, but I did this one too, which is weird. We actually did this Aero United Industries louver system too. But Autodesk Seek, you type in what you want, it's got everything. It even has SketchUp, 3ds, all that. So,
and most of the families on Autodesk Seek are done by manufacturers. So a company will pay somebody to model all the different components, like all their lighting fixtures or something like that, and then post them up on the site for people to download for free, so they'll specify their products in their buildings. So
it's basically cheaper advertising. With how many people that are using Revit, if I own a light company and I have really sexy lights, I pay Autodesk to find somebody to model my products, which in turn has links inside of them that lead back to
the manufacturer.
Yeah, the manufacturer site, not Autodesk site. So this one's really rigid. You have to abide by super harsh guidelines to create stuff.
So you can't really submit stuff yourself here, but these will be sort of your best quality families on this website here because they're done by professionals.
This is stuff like if you're looking at a book and you see I need a certain chiller or air conditioner, you're going to find it here probably.
Yeah.
The next one, Revit City, is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. This is an all user submitted site. So that means people like me and you can just make a family, submit it, they'll okay it or deny it.
And then they'll post them here in the forums.
This is useful. This is useful for one-off products. That has some neater stuff in it. You're not going to find really neat stuff in Autodesk Seek. You're just not going to. They're not going to okay it. No manufacturer is going to pay them to model it. So you're looking at more one-off product. The huge problem with Revit City is there's not really any form of check. There's no checking system for these models, so they'll look at this picture and say, all right, the model looks good, and they'll put it in there, and actually the model is really crappy. Yeah. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change materials even, so the people modeling it literally made geometry and didn't make it do anything. So it's kind of worthless. You just have an ugly brown couch or an ugly stainless steel faucet that you want bronze instead, or you have a counter that the countertop can't change. It has to be wood every time.
Or it's too tall or too low, and you can't really change that without editing the whole family. So.
Yeah, so you might as well do your own if that's the case. But you can sometimes find some really neat ones, some one-off ones that you can go in and with a little editing, you can have a really great product instead of doing the thing from scratch. And then the last one, which we're trying to be a medium point between the too strict, which is Autodesk Seek, and the too loose, which is Revit City. So we want to be a user-based group that submits work. These are the three that we're kind of offering now: Revit, Photoshop, and SketchUp. User-based, you submit it, we okay it, or we tell you what to fix. We could also fix it, but then you wouldn't learn anything. So you click on Revit, we'll go to Revit, and we'll see the chair that I just showed you, but it's in black, and you see its little wicked cousin that's a rocking chair.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
You know, we have an illuminated sink and vanity that one of the design students at Southern Poly did, and I just modeled it for them. And then even some, you know, weird stuff, chair that took 3 seconds to make.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of these. I have a ton more. We're just trying to roll them out slower. That way everybody gets a chance to see them. Otherwise there'll be like 3 pages of these and then they'll get lost. We have to make some kind of ordering system soon. But there's also Photoshop stuff now too. These are basically for the people that forgot to do a template or running late on their Photoshop. You can grab one of these, edit it a little bit. Tells you what you have. You have different DPIs, different sizes. I think it's a pretty great idea. I don't know of any company that does this yet. Especially that helps architecture students. You might be able to find some design portfolio stuff if you're like a graphic designer or something to start with, but nothing, you know, rigid for an architecture student. So, with that being said, let's hop over to Revit.
So there's where you can find some families that are already sort of done for you. You can just download and then place in your projects.
If you have any families, email us. You got Adam Thomas at arcdesignlabs.com or Jeremy Smith at arcdesignlabs.com, and send us those families and let us review them, and then we'll throw them on the website. The credit's going to go to you, not us. We're not going to say this was modeled by Adam Thomas when, you know, Billy Bob sent it to us. So today we're going to edit an existing family. We're going to show you what a family is from scratch, a little one, and then we're going to do, you know, something bigger. So if I want to replace this chair or something. You're looking at a project, I'm probably going to end up just loading this stuff back in as we go along. But to start a family, we want to click the Revit button, the R button. We're going to go New. We're going to say Family. And when Family pops up, you have a bazillion things that it can be. Anything from electrical components to columns, and it's what they say they are. You know, site model, structural columns, whatever. 9 times out of 10, I would say generic model is the one you used, and you can specify generic models to be ceiling based, like a light, face based, which means it just has to find a face. The face doesn't have to be a wall or anything. It can just be a mash you created and you want to plop it on the side of it. 4, of course, line. You draw a line. Like I could make that stair a line based family. That'd be pretty neat. Roof. You know, these are basic. You know, you can tell what they are. I always start with generic because you can always make them into one of these other ones after you finish, except for systems. If it's a system, you really can't turn a generic model into a system. It's weird. But even if you look at like generic model, I have it clicked, a little preview, you see 2 reference lines or reference planes, and you click furniture, it's the exact same thing. It's just going to give it a title that says furniture. That's the only difference. So maybe you take this generic model and say it'll be furniture later. Doesn't really matter, because in the end, generic model's fine. So that's what we're going to start with.
Yeah, it's more important to see about the wall-based and the ceiling-based, because if you create a ceiling-based family, there's no way to place it unless you have a ceiling in your project. Or if it's a floor-based, you can't place it unless you have a floor. So if you're not really sure exactly where it's going to be going in your project, then you don't want to make it to where it can only be placed, you know, on a certain wall or face, unless you know it's a wall-based, you know, component. So pay attention to those before you start making a family.
Alright, so this is a new screen. I don't think we've ever seen this one before. It has 2 reference planes, and that's it. Yay for reference planes. Right now, I'm basically going to show you what parametric means. I'm going to show it pretty quickly. We're going to make a cube, and there's 2 ways of doing it. You know, most people want to go straight up to your extrusion tool, and they want to take, and let's say we're going to make a cube, and they're just going to make the cube. And then they're going to say finish, and there's their cube. And that's what they want to call it. Done. You know, make it whatever size you need it, and all of a sudden you have your cube. That's what most people do. But we're not most people. so we're not going to do it that way. That's not parametric at all, so let's delete it. And we're going to go back to our reference level. The first thing we want to do, and it seems kind of weird at first the way I do families, but if you keep in mind that you're going to do this over and over and over again, you end up creating really nice templates you can use, and it saves yourself 30 minutes on a 45-minute model. So you end up making a model in 15 minutes just because you already have the reference planes down pat. We need these guidelines, reference planes or reference lines, to help us constrain a parameter. So to constrain that cube to where when I tell the width to be something, the cube knows to be that width. So I always use reference planes because reference planes can be snapped to inside a project. Reference lines are just for this local use. You'll never see them inside a project. They can't be snapped to. If it gets really harsh with reference planes, I start taking some of the reference planes out and replacing them with reference lines. But that's really it. They do the same thing. One of them can be snapped to, one of them can't. One of them you can use to model off of too. Reference planes, you can model geometry off of them. You can't do that with a reference line. So that being said, let's put some reference planes down. We basically want this cube to have a width, height, and a depth, and that's it. So we're going to put a line on this side, a line on this side, and I'm arbitrarily placing them for a reason because that's the beauty of a parameter. You don't have to be exact. So, alright, so here's this side. Keep hitting the wrong button. Alright, so this is basically going to be your width from here to here, and your depth is from this line up to the front line, or vice versa. Alright, so how do you tell this to be parametric? We're going to use the measuring tool. You can find them either on the Home tab, Annotate tab, or under the Modify tab. The Modify tab is open more than the rest of them, so we'll just use this one. You can do a bunch of different ones. Arc lengths, radials, angulars. We're just going to do a line because these lines are parallel, no big deal. And we want to start by saying, this outside is going to be our depth, but we also need to do something else. These two lines right here represent the absolute center of the project. So we want these to remain in the center at all times. So we need to click on all three of these lines. And when we click on them, you'll see a little EQ button pops up. Let me come down here. You have EQ, you have the two distances, so these distances are not equal, and that's what the line through it is. And then you have locks. The locks will make the parameter to where it's never changed ever again, like you can't break it. The equalize symbol will put the lines equal. So now these lines are perfectly equal. You don't want to lock them, no, because then you can't really make it parametric still. Locks would be used if you're trying to constrain it like 3 inches off a wall or something. And we want to do the same thing for this upper half. We're going to click all three lines, tell it to be equal. We're going to click the outside lines, and that's going to be our width. So how do we add those parameters in? That's actually really easy. You click on it. There's a drop down button. It says label, and you want to say add parameter. And this is the only thing you're really paying attention to right now is that you say that the name is whatever you're trying to name it. So in this case, I'm naming this depth. It's a length, it's a dimension. Under here there's a bunch of different ones. That again, they are what they say. If it's for electrical, it's electrical. If it's data, it's data. Dimension you're going to use 99 times out of 100. Don't worry about type and instance. It's just not worth getting into, really. We covered what type and instance is in a previous
class.
Yeah, previous little class, and it ended up being a 15-minute discussion. But you don't really need it on families. Types work wonders. So you can see it change. It says the depth is now equal to 1 foot 10 inches, and we want this to be width. You can do the same thing, label, or the opposite way. You can right click, go to label. The label will pop up over where you're at, say add parameter, and we can say this is going to be width, its dimension, done. Alright, so we have all we're going to use, width and depth, in the plan view, but now we need to go to another view. I always use left view for some reason. It actually puts the model backwards if you use left view, but we want to draw another reference plane for the height. Doesn't matter, throw it in here. Escape key. Alright, so we're going to also give this a constraint. We don't have to get this in an equal constraint because we want it to touch the reference level. Whatever we're snapping it to, we want it to land on top of it. If you want it to land below it, you would put stuff below. You draw your geometry below this as well. So we don't want, if you look, you have, if you tab through it, you have a reference level or a reference plane, and you have a reference level. So there's two different lines right on top of each other. And when you're doing constraints like this, you don't want to hit the reference level. You always want to hit the planes, just because that causes funky errors in your model. Yep. So we're going to tab through until we get to the, the tighter dashed line. Draw that up, and then we're going to label this one as height. Add parameter height, not hue, height. Say okay. All right, done. So let me go back to a reference level, that way you can actually see this be parametric. So right now we don't even have any geometry created or anything. We don't need to. We've already created a parametric family. So by clicking on the type properties, top left, family types, and then these are those parameters we just added. So if I want the width to be, let's say 3 foot, and I want the height to be 1 foot, I can go through here and change all this. The depth I want to be 6 inches maybe. So let's say 6 inches. And then when I hit OK, you'll see the lines flex. So if I hit Control Z and Control Y, you see before those parameters, after those parameters. And everything stayed center, everything did what it was supposed to. It's amazing. So now the only thing we have to do is draw our geometry over the top of it. So we're going to go Home. Here's all of our geometry tools. We're just going to use an extrusion. And I'm going to use a square because that's the fastest. And I'm going to draw it. These reference planes are my guidelines basically, and I'm going to snap to them and draw it right where it should be. And this is the case where you want to use the locks, because you always want these lines to move with those reference planes. If you didn't lock it, the geometry is going to stay the exact same size, and then your lines are going to flex, and you're going to wonder why the model is not parametric. So we need to lock every one of these. If you want the geometry to move with the lines, you need to lock it to that line, and then just hit OK. So if I change over to shade it with edges, you actually see we've created geometry now. Now we need to go to the left view and make sure that both of these are locked. So if you pull them up and pull them down, they're not locked. Because if they were, you wouldn't be able to move them. All we need to do is drag it back up and hit lock, and then drag this one down and hit lock. So pretty cool. And shade it with edges. We got it. Alright, so I'm going to go to a 3D view, hit shade it with edges, and we're going to do one more parameter, and then we're going to flex it a little bit. So to add a material or a finish, in 2009 and 2010 it was a lot different. Now that this properties box is open, it's a little bit easier. It's just in a weirder spot because you're so used to right clicking on stuff to label it, and there is no label for this one. Now you just go over here and say material, and you can change the material right here by clicking the little etc button, but there's a new button off to the right of it. It's like a double etc button. So we want to click that button and say add parameter, and we're going to say this is the cube material, and it's going to go under materials and finishes. Ta-da! Okay. Now when we open this up, the types properties again, the family types, we have cube material. We can go in and tell that cube material to be whatever we want it to be. It's glass. We can also flex this, and it can flex just to whatever you want. I mean, I can put huge numbers or really tiny numbers, and it's always going to flex. Not sure about negative numbers. I don't think they do that. I think it'll honk at you if you do negative numbers. But why would you do a negative number?
Just go inside.
So when I change this, ta-da, we have this gigantic box. I can go in and change it again, make a cube this time. Doop. There's a little cube. So this is a fully parametric family because I can't move this without typing in a parameter. It'll say constraints are not satisfied. It'll make me either remove the constraint, which you can't do in a project, or it'll say cancel. And we can do whatever we want to. We can name it, we can add more parameters, whatever. All these parameters you're adding can be viewed within the project. That's what's good about them. You don't add parameters, you can't change it in the project. You have to come back into the family and change it every single time.
Yeah.
So, moving on, we understand parameters now. Let's edit an existing family. That way we can kind of figure things out a little bit more. I'm not going to save this because it's a cube, for God's sakes. Alright, so here's a project I did, a little house, and I managed to ignore this door. That was one we did when it crashed last time. But for some reason when I did this project, I rendered it with these doors being generic doors. That's like the only thing I didn't change. Like I changed all the stairs, I changed the back door, I changed all the cabinetry, I changed all the chairs. Everything was changed except for this door and this door. And I'm not really sure why I didn't change it, but it's a good example of how you can change an existing family to make it look just a little bit better for your own, progress. To make you understand the project better, to make your reviewers understand that you're understanding the project better, and then you won't get pointed out saying you bought Home Depot doors and threw it in this sexy house.
Yeah.
So to do that, all we want to do is go to edit type. I always forget this actually.
That's true. You can't edit it well in the 3D view. If
That's
you're in
right. Same thing that happened last time.
Yeah, a plan view or a section. Then you can sort of edit families, but it won't let you in a 3D perspective view.
You can't edit it in the
reason.
camera. Yeah, I don't know why. Couldn't you do that in 2010? I think that's why I keep doing it. Is because in 2010 I think you could. It's gonna be hard to get to this door. All right, so I'm gonna look through here. All right. Edit family. So I click the door and then I'm going to say edit family.
And just to explain, the interface for families is actually a little bit different, and the way you model is a little bit different compared to what we've learned in 3D massing and in the project environment. Here it works similar to sort of Form Z in that you have standard types of 3D modeling tools, such as the extrusion tool, which you draw a shape and extrude it up. Our blend, where you draw two different profiles and blend them together, and then revolve, where you draw a profile and then rotate around an axis, and then sweep, where you draw a line and then a profile, and then the swept blend, which is essentially a mix of the blend tool and the sweep tool. So it sweeps around a line with two different profiles. So those are your main tools for modeling in families. It doesn't work the same way as intuitively as the 3D massing environment, the conceptual massing environment. Which essentially just came out with the last 2010 and 2011 release. They just had the conceptual massing. So before then, this was the only type of massing you had for creating forms. So it works a little bit differently than your project environment and differently from your conceptual massing. So it's a whole new interface almost. So keep that in mind when you're trying to model stuff. You can't just draw a profile and then extrude it or anything like that. You have to choose the right tool first and then do it. So.
Alright, so we have this really boring door that I got Hanish whiplash for using, and I want to model a little bit sexier one. I was going to do the one that you saw on the left really quick, but instead I'm just going to draw one that maybe has two little glass inserts or something that still matches the cubism of the house, but isn't the other one because I've already shown that one. So anyway, we're actually in a 3D view now, and we can see that this is a door. Ta-da! Sweet door. Boring. What I want to do is I want to go to a front view though, and you can see all the parameters that are tied to this along with this window, this family types window. So I'll pull this down. This is an Autodesk Seek family, basically, and it has crazy amounts of
parameters.
It even has multiple names, multiple types, so you don't have to just keep punching it in. That's something good to do sometimes. Doors, yes. Furniture, not so much. It already has materials tied to it. That's cool. You don't really have to worry about construction. And then these dimensions is really all we're going to pay attention to at all, because these dimensions govern what's happening in the door. So let's just cancel out of this, and I'm going to start drawing random pieces everywhere, and hopefully it turns out okay. So what I want to do is basically just put some glass inserts inside this door, and then change the materials so that it doesn't look like the same door anymore. Um, we're going to start by going home. We're going to go back to extrusion. And it's going to ask me to pick a plane, which for some reason it doesn't have a plane on there. Weird. This is where reference planes come in really handy, because if you have reference planes you can just tell it to be those. But obviously this normal everyday out of the box component from Revit doesn't have a front back plane. So we're going to pick one. If you pick one, all you need to do is pick geometry that you're drawing on, pretty much. So here's the door. I can click this geometry and now it'll let me draw straight on the door. I could also pick the trim too, it wouldn't matter, or pick the wall, anything that's flat. So I'm going to do a rectangle, and I'm going to do maybe a rectangle up here, and maybe I'll do a rectangle down the side. How big do I want it? Don't want to put it too low to the ground. You know what? We're going to do it to this line, because then I can lock it. And I can lock this line to always be even with this line. You know, sure, that's cool. I want this one a little bit farther down. I keep hitting the wrong button if you're hearing that noise. Dude. So it's cool. As I'm moving the top line, you know, this line's moving with it. The only thing I might do while I'm in here is tell these lines that I always want them to move with the door. So if this door gets wider or smaller, this line will stay the same distance apart. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to add a dimension line, and I'm going to tell it from this line to here, which is a weird dimension, 2 1/32 of an inch. Sweet. But if you click this line, it'll actually now let you edit that dimension based on you putting it in. So if I only want this to be, I don't know, 3 inches, maybe I want a little bit of room. I can tell this to be, maybe I want this to be the window offset or something. Window offset. The only thing I'm going to do different is this is no longer a dimension, this is a constraint. Just because constraints I can embed inside of stuff, you'll never see them inside the project really, it's pretty amazing. This is just for me. And I can go through and say, well, I like that 3 inches, I want everything in this model to abide by that 3-inch rule. So I can go down through here, and I'm going to click basically everything but, let's say, this bottom part. So when I go back and select this dimension and say label, I can say label it as window offset, and it automatically offsets those windows, so I didn't have to go back in and type it in all the time. I set up the parameter first, and then I use that parameter to reconstrain everything I just put dimension lines on. So I always want this line to move with the center. We got that. That's cool. So when the door moves up and down, you know, what are these pieces going to do? They're going to go out of control is what they're going to do. So I want to find the reference plane again down at the bottom. I want to snap to this. And I also want to snap from this line to this line. And you know what? They're close enough to where I could say, you know what, I like the 10 inches. So I'm going to do another parameter. And I'm going to say maybe a T to B, which is a top to bottom window offset. Just so I know what it is. Everybody calls everything different. As long as you understand it, it's fine. So that's a constraint again. There it is. Those are good to go. And now I want this one to be the top to bottom window offset. It'll automatically flex that one. So I think that's about all the modeling we need to do for those 2 little windows, and that's good. Alright, so let's go to, I'd say left again. It's hard to see these. Shading with edges, shaded with edges. I'm going to have to hide this wall by saying HH. That way I can only see the trim and the door. That's all I want to see. And because I'm only cutting the door, I want to pull this to the door side, lock it, and pull this to the other side of the door and lock it. And you may think that was kind of pointless, because we'll go to 3D now, turn back on the shading, and we can see it inside the door. It's solid geometry inside of solid geometry. You know, kind of strange.
Right.
So now let's change these to something we can cut through the door with. So to do that, it's really easy. You click the geometry you made, you come over here where it says solid void, drop it down to a void. The reason I didn't draw it as a void first is because if you're drawing it as a void, it automatically cuts it as soon as you say okay, so you may cut stuff that you didn't want to cut. It's easier to do the solid and then tell it to cut.
And it's also hard to see the void when you get done with it. It disappears and just cuts stuff, and you're like, well, where's the void? So if you didn't draw it in like the perfect spot, you'll never be able to find it again. So
like these are easier to find. They're big, but say if I want to do a tinier one where I'm just cutting out maybe a door hole or something, you'll never find the void. It's really difficult, especially if you do it a long time. You'll just end up losing them. So I'm gonna go to cut, and I want to cut those holes out. So click the solid geometry first, and then the voided geometry. So now I have 2 holes through the door, but I want these to be glass, right? So let's make them glass. And to do that, we're just gonna go back to the front. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Oh, I didn't have this one set. That's right. Alright, so back to the front. We're going to say home. We're going to do another extrusion. We're going to pick the same plane, which is the door. Ta-da! And we're going to draw rectangles inside of these rectangles. And look, we're going to tell it to lock because the void's already cut the space, so we know to lock it to that voided space. And because that voided space has all the offsets tied to it, then that means this form is also going to have those offsets by default. That's kind of nice. So let's go back to left, and I'm going to hide the trim because it's a little in my way. And I want this to be glass is what I'm going for. So it's kind of weird to do glass. The door is not going to get any thicker, so you could just arbitrarily place it like I'm doing. Or you could add a dimension line, say from the door to the edge of that glass, and then from this side door to the edge of the glass, or give the glass a thickness. That would work too. It doesn't really matter. The door's not going to get thicker, so I'm just trying to do something quick. You know, studio, I want to put some windows in here real quick, done. So let's make sure that works. Ta-da! Alright, so it's not glass yet, but it's the shape we want. It's where we want it. Now we just need to tell it, just like the cube before, to be a material parameter. So click this little button. And this is Windows. Say OK. And it doesn't change it to a window. Like some people think when you add the parameter, it kind of like knows what you're doing and does it for you automatically, but it's not true. You still have to go back to the family types. You still have to say Windows. Click that. Make it a material, glass. There's one thing, like these doors are just way too common, but we're going to leave it. You can always change these materials, and I would say change them. Even if you wanted to take off the trim, just take off the trim. You know, that's cool. When you're done though, you don't just load it back into the project, because when you do, it's going to want to override the single flush door. So that means that single flush door that comes with Revit is going to disappear. You don't want that. You want to say save as, and we're going to call it, I'm going to save it to desktop because I like to create my own little folder. So single flush 2 window, just so I kind of know what's going on. Single flush 2 window, you know, done.
Yeah, always make sure you duplicate, because
yeah, save that thing. Save as, not save. Save as.
Duplicate.
Yeah, don't overwrite stuff. You'll be in a world of trouble, and then you'll have to get it all back. I've seen some really messed up projects where people have just ruined all the out-of-box stuff on Revit, and then they end up having to delete Revit and reinstall it because it's so messed up you just can't get it back. So I'm gonna load this in a project now that I've renamed it. I'm gonna go back to my interior view I was at. You know, here's the door we kind of left in. And I'm going to change both of these doors to our new door that we just loaded in. So single flush 2 window. And there it is. So single flush 2 window door works great. Popped right in. And just like anything else, if I go to my second floor, and drill all the way down here, I'm going to turn on some shading. I'm going to turn this down to coarse. If I click these doors, I can still flip them, and the geometry inside the door will still flip. Because the parameters are already tied into this door, I didn't delete them. They're still there, so it still knows to flip. I can do it either way. It's going to flip with it. So it's kind of nice. All right, so that's these doors are open the wrong way anyway.
Because we made those parameters, now we could also change the materials here in the project without having to go all the way back out to the
Yeah, let's actually do that real quick.
family.
So maybe I don't like the door material. Maybe I don't like that brown because the wall looks like it's a tan color anyway, so that'll look kind of crappy if I did that.
Brown on brown.
So make sure we have the single floor, you know, the single flush 2-window door selected. Go to edit type. Actually the windows need to be changed back to glass too. Glass. And door material. Right now it's called door panel. And let's just say I want it to be, I don't know, burnt cherry. That's cool. No, yeah, burnt cherry. Red. Add some red into that door. So because I told it to apply it to both the doors, that family, basically, it did it to both.
All the doors of that type will change. So.
But you know, now's the time where I'm going, you know what, I don't really like that trim. I could go back in and delete the trim. And then you have a door that was really crappy.
Yeah.
That you made look pretty custom really fast. And you could do stuff like add handles, because there's no handles on any doors in Revit.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if you think about a rendering, say light bouncing off a chrome handle, it has a bunch of reflections, and sometimes it just wastes time in the render, so they don't do them. But you might want the door, the doors to have doorknobs.
Yeah, if it's a little detail you're looking at, then you're going to want that doorknob in there. But if it's a huge building, you know, you're not really worried about doorknobs being rendered. But it depends on the case, I suppose.
Alright, so I actually like that door.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I like the other one too that I did, but... Alright, so that's basically we showed you how to do parameters, and then we edited an existing component. I mean, even if it's just edit the material, like these chairs, go in, edit type. I don't like the leg. So right now the legs are plastic. Weird. Maybe I wanted to do metallic silver. Alright, done. So I changed the legs to metallic silver. Something really simple. Everybody uses these chairs though, so you probably don't want to use those. I just used them because it got down to the end of this little 3-week project and had to get it out.
But you could always take those and edit them a little bit.
Yeah, you could do the same thing.
Yeah, same way we did the doors.
So we're done with that.
Yeah, so there's your parameters, and then there's your editing it out of the box family. So now you can completely change your project just by, slightly changing, one of the out of the box projects. But now let's start to get into family straight from scratch.
So this is we can't find anything after looking for a few minutes, and we're just gonna say, all right, well, I found something cool on IKEA. So let's see here. Let's go to IKEA. There's IKEA. Oh, look, I found a Karlstad chair. IKEA's got some great chairs, some great furniture. Even greater is that they give you the product dimensions, so they're doing a lot of the work you need to do. One of the big things is I can see somebody that can create some nice geometry in families, but they have no idea about proportion or scale. So they end up creating like a chair that only a 9-foot tall person will be able to sit in. Or they create, say, a handrail that's only 28 inches off the ground for some reason, something weird that like they did no research on. So if you're one of those people, IKEA, here's some dimensions. And most places, Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like that, they give you the dimensions. They might not give you all of them. IKEA gives you all of them. So that's nice. So we're going to try to replicate this chair as fast as we can using, our form creation skills and the reference points.
All from scratch.
All from scratch. I'm going to do Revit. I'm going to go new under families. Don't go under projects. Go under families. And I'm going to go back to that same generic model family template that I opened, generic model. And we're back at square one. Reference point. I actually wrote down all the dimensions for that chair, so I'm not going to look back at it until I start creating geometry. And I'm going to kind of go fast now. So we're going to do the same thing we were doing before. The chair has a depth. The chair has a width. I always want these to be even. I'm kind of OCD about that. It looks nicer. The chair also has a seat depth though, so that would be seat depth and seat width kind of goes inside of the overall depth and overall width, so we need 2 more lines. And this is actually going to be like the hand, where you put your arms, the arm part of it, the armrest. The depth is a little bit different because if we look at it real quick, if you look at this chair, the cushion kind of overhangs in the front and doesn't in the back. So the seat depth is a little bit off, maybe an inch. So we're going to go in here. We're actually going to put this on the outside, and then in the back we have to put it on the inside because the seat's actually going to go from this line to this line will be the depth. Alright, so let's add these lines in. We always want it to be equal, so the first thing we do is tell it to be equal. And then we tell it to be the full distance. And then same with this outer dimension, equal. It should be almost equal. And then do outer dimension. With this, we're going to do from the first line to this third line, but we're not going to tell it to be equal because that's the seat depth, but the seat depth is not going to be centered around this line. However, the overall depth will be. So from this second line back to the last line, that depth will be centered. And we need to do maybe a dimension right here. So I basically set up all the dimensions we need really quick. Now let's just name them. So click that one. This one's going to be add parameter, seat depth, dimension. That's good. This one is going to be your width, your overall width. So width. This one is going to be your seat width. And this one is going to be your seat depth. Add parameter. Oh, kind of messed up on that one, didn't I? This one should be depth over here, not seat depth. But that's okay. This one can be seat depth. Alright, so there's all the parameters for the plan view of this. I do think I want maybe a 1-inch overhang, and this is where the lock kind of comes in, because if I always want this to be a 1-inch overhang, I can just lock it. I don't have to add a parameter to it. So they don't have to go through and type all that stuff out. I just get it where I want it and say, alright, done. You could also do the back if you felt like, but you can't do the front and the back, because then you're double constraining all the lines, and then it'll say you've over constrained it, and it'll honk at you, but you'll learn as you go. So, I'm going to do the right elevation this time, and I'm going to do seat height and height, regular height and seat height. So I need to go home, reference plane, so maybe that's the seat height, and here's the height. Need to do the line again, dimension line. We want the plane under it, not the reference level. And you can't do both of them at the same time either. You have to do them separate still. So, ta-da. This one's going to be add parameter height. And this one is going to be seat height. So, I mean, in literally, I think 5 minutes, we've added 6 parameters to this chair. Now it's as simple as drawing in some of your base geometry after you set up your template. And I mean, you're on your way to being finished already. So we're going to go back to the family types, and I'm going to add in all these dimensions that IKEA so graciously gave us. So there's the width. I mean, you may not think it's important to do the 7/8 inch, but it just looks that much better. The seat looks more realistic, being the exact height that it's made instead of just random numbers.
Yeah. It's crazy how 7/8 of an inch can change the entire way it looks and feels.
Seat depth, 22 inches. Got the height, 31.5 inches. Depth, there's depth. 36 and 5/8. 36 and 5/8. And hopefully I put all this where it should be and I can hit OK, and now I have this amazing template. Hopefully. Yeah. Looks like it. This kind of threw me off, but that's because the cushion goes behind it like this, something like that, and the back of the chair is back here, so that's groovy. Alright, so where I like to start again is the top, and if you see, I mean, if you're looking at it, straight down, here's the cushion overhang. The cushion goes back to this line, that's kind of crunchy. And then back here we have the arms. We're pretty much good to go. The only thing I'm going to add before we start, just because didn't do it last time that I tried to make this family and then ended up having to do it again, is I'm going to put a line down here for the legs. So this is where a little bit of guessing comes in, but I mean, if you're looking at it, you can say, alright, well, if the chair is only 31 inches high to this cushion, then maybe we're looking at 4 inches, maybe 4.5 inches. And this is one of the things that's not going to look bad if you get it wrong. Like, you could do them, 10 inches, yeah, it's going to look pretty crappy. You could do them 2 inches and it's not going to look crappy.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say 4 inches, and then if we want to, we'll change it later.
That's what's good about parameters. You can always change it.
And I'm also going to say that because the chair, this main body of the chair, there's just as much of this pillow sticking above it as there is feet below it. So I'm going to give both of those the same dimension. So let's do 4 inches down as well. And I don't have to constrain those to each other. I could. I could say that this is from here to here. I could say that this is maybe the leg height. I mean, I could do that. That way I could say that I need the legs to be longer or shorter in a project. That might be pretty cool. But the top, I don't really want it to change with the legs necessarily. I just always want it to be 4 inches.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be where we just use our little lock. Doop. And it's good to go. Alright, so what I like to do next is come back and let's get a bigger image. So basically I'm looking at this, and some people might say, alright, well, it's got an arm, so that's 2 pieces of geometry. It's got a bottom, that's 3. It's got a back, 4. It's got 2 pillows, so that's 6 pieces of geometry, and it's got 4 legs, so that's 10 pieces of geometry. But I don't want to make 10 pieces of geometry. I'm trying to do this in, say, 3 pieces of geometry. So what we're going to do is, this chair is basically a cube. We've already made a cube. We know how to do that. It's basically a cube. So let's start with a cube. Alright, so I'm going to start from a reference level. I always start from a reference level for some reason. I'm going to make, you know what, in this case, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to go back out of here. I'm going to make it on the right view. I'll show you why. Alright, so extrusion again. And this is where you just got to pay attention. The chair does go all the way back to this line. This is the front, but it doesn't go to the front line. It doesn't go way up here. It goes at these lines we just made. And I'm going to lock them because I always want it to move with that. At a certain point you can flex the chair and it'll start looking stupid though. So you'll be able to flex it a little bit. Like if you wanted more arm in the chair, you'd be able to do that. No big deal. Alright, so the reason I did it in the right view is because if we go back and look at this, whoop, let's look at the actual picture. See the roundovers on the chair? We don't want sharp edges, we want those roundovers. So I'm going to use the fillet. That's this little button right here. Whoop.
Pretty sweet tool.
Click here and here. You click the 2 lines you're trying to arc, basically. And I always do everything randomly at first, just for the sake of being fast. And then I go back in and say, I don't really like any of those. They're all too big. So maybe 1.5 inches works?
Yeah, that's alright.
Alright, perfect. And then I'm just going to change all these to 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. And the last one, 1.5 inches. So we've done all of our roundovers on this chair, which is, it's kind of nice. You may even do an inch instead of an inch and a half. And we've already locked them, so this is done. Say yes sir, done. I always go to shaded with edges once I start creating geometry. go to my reference view, and it always asks you a depth when you create the thing. So when you create an extrusion, it's going to offset to a 1 foot depth, and I don't ever change that because you still have to pull these arms to the edges to lock it. So it doesn't matter if I tell it to be this exact same, you know, here's the width,
Yeah, it's not gonna.
2 foot 11 and 7/8 inches. If I do that, I still have to say, all right, move this, make it touch the line, and then lock it. So there's no point in doing it. All right, let me get a 3D view going too. That way I can see this.
Already looks like a chair.
All right, there it is, chair. We're finished. All right, so I don't know what I want to do next. Maybe I'll do the feet next, just to break stride a little bit, and then I'll show you what I was talking about with the why the chair is a cube. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the feet in, just because I don't want to do another void yet. So home extrusion. The cool thing about the feet, I can just draw one, and let's say I want this. I did it the exact dimension I want it, but 1.5 by 1.5 inches. I can go through and add parameters to this, which this is, you know, where parameters come in and where parameters are amazing. Is I can come through and say I want both of these to be the chair, let's see, the leg thickness. And that's still a dimension to me, so I'm gonna leave it. But I also need an offset in here, so it's gonna start getting really funky for a minute because there's gonna be a lot of stuff. So maybe I like the 2-inch offset because you got to remember we have a 1.5 inch roundover.
Yeah.
So we can't put it up in the roundover. So maybe I want this to be. This is where I'm gonna do this one first. That way the other one will automatically snap to it. So this is going to be the leg offset. And this to me is a constraint, not a dimension. So leg offset, I'm going to click the other one, leg offset, and hopefully they kind of fix itself. So you saw, I'm going to spread these apart just for the sake of the video. Alright, so the leg thicknesses stayed 1.5 inches because I already told those to be 1.5 inches. And the leg offset just moved the leg where it should go. So that's really nice. Thanks for doing that. And we're going to mirror these to where they should go. So there's no center point, so let's use the other mirror tool. 2011 has 2 mirror options. It has pick axis and draw axis. I love the draw axis one because I can draw right in the middle of this geometry and axis, and it'll flip it over it. Before it didn't have that, and you always pulled your hair out because you'd get inside. Well, you'd get inside an extrusion, and the only way you could do it is draw a line. So you'd have to quit what you're doing, draw a line, and then flip it over that line instead of just going with the flow and finishing things. It was really frustrating.
Yeah.
Pain in the butt. But they wisened up to it, I guess, and figured it out. I'm not going to do every one of these. I'm just going to show you that. Otherwise, it'll take me all afternoon. Not really want to take that because I could.
Yeah, no.
I could just go through.
It's not really going to take that long.
I'll just show you whatever. So Jeremy, sing a song or something while we're waiting. All I'm doing is going through and putting dimension lines on every one of these. I could try to copy all the dimensions over, like as I'm mirroring it. I could try, but
sometimes it works.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't like to risk it.
Yeah, it's kind of risky.
Because then you have to do the step twice instead of once, and I'd rather do things once. I don't like redoing stuff, so I try to do it right the first time. Alright, so if I hold down Control and click all the ones that are labeled 2 inches, I can tell those to be, where's it at? The leg offset. So, ta-da, all those leg offsets. Now click all the ones that say 1.5 inches. And because I've already mirrored it, they're in the right spot, so it shouldn't do anything. And these are leg thicknesses. So that's a lot of crud for just legs, but those are fully parametric legs now. We don't ever have to go into this edit mode again, so it doesn't matter how messy we leave it. And I mean, I would normally straighten it up still, but It doesn't matter. I would straighten this up if I was putting it on the website for everybody. So the one you find on the website will be straightened. So we're done with that. They're all constrained. We're going to go back to our right view. Here's the legs. They go way up in the chair. We don't want that. Because of the 1 foot depth. We want them to snap here, and we want them to snap to this bottom line. Alright, so there's the legs. Now we can go back to the chair part, because right now it's a big cube. It's like a gigantic ottoman, basically.
Yes.
So we go to our reference level. We're going to create another solid piece of geometry. Rectangle, rectangle. You know what? I'm going to put an offset in the back. That's the other one I forgot. So maybe, I don't know, we'll try 3 inches. I think that's what it was last time. And we'll tell this to be locked. This is for the back part of the sofa where the cushion leans up against. So, home extrusion. Now we're good to go. Now we can actually lock it to everything, which is really nice. That's what I like to do, is see all these locks.
I know.
These are perfect. And then say, okay, dokie. Go right. We're going to make sure we snap it to the top and the bottom. Top and the bottom. Alright, so go back to our 3D view. We can see our 2 pieces of geometry inside each other. Now we just change this one to a void. And then we're going to say cut. Oops, that's my fault. Can't cut all the way through the chair. We need to be up. And this is where we'd have another line first. So let's see, 2, 3. It's not that big.
Yeah, it's fine.
Maybe 4 inches. Let's do 4 inches. Alright, so that was my mistake.
It's easy to add reference planes later if you need to. I mean, it's not one of those things, if you don't do them all at the beginning, you're screwed. It's as you go, you can if you need to, but it's best to have them all done before you even start. But
Yeah, some of them you're just gonna kind of miss.
yeah, I mean, you can't think of all of them.
I mean, I didn't think of that one, but I mean, I've done this chair 3 times and I still didn't think of it, so whoops.
So if it's your first time, yeah.
Alright, so now we're gonna cut it and it should be okay. Alright, so instead of creating arm, back, bottom, we just created cube, cut a hole in it. A lot nicer, a lot quicker. I'm going to look at the picture again. I actually want this bottom part to be a little bit thicker, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe I want this to be, I don't know, 5 inches. I just don't like that it's not thick enough. So now I'm going to lock it. And it should have moved the geometry with it because I made it all parametric. It should have. Let's check.
Yeah.
It looks that way. Yeah, see there? Boop. Changed the reference plane afterwards and it was all good. Alright, so now we have the cushions left. That's pretty much it and we're done. We can add the material parameters and call it quits. So the cushions I'm going to draw from the same side again. And we're going to draw both cushions at the same time too. Don't want to waste time on anything. So come all the way up to here for now. It's a big thick cushion. And this probably actually needs to go up more at the bottom. We can do that in a little bit. From this point, which I said was the back, we need to make the back part the angled cushion. So I'm kind of drawing stuff randomly right now, and then you go back and fix it. But that's the cool thing about all the families and parameters, is I'm kind of being arbitrary, but I'm not. I need this to go under it, that's for sure. Maybe this goes all the way back this time, and we lock it. Yeah, it's way too thick. But I'm going to go ahead and snap at all these lines, that way I can give the bottom a little more chunk to it and it'll work. I want this one to be close to it, and I want to round over these edges to soften up the harsh corners while I'm here. You don't got to do the back ones, don't waste your time.
See those.
And I don't really know, maybe I'll do an inch this time because an inch and a half would make it look kind of funny. That one's already an inch, and I changed it to an inch anyway.
Yeah, double inch.
Pretty consistent at getting an inch and a quarter though.
I know.
Oh, missed one.
It's not to the nearest quarter, depending on how zoomed in you are or whatever.
Alright, I'm gonna, just because I don't want it to look like this pillow is floating, you can't make them cross, but you can make these lines get really close. And then, I'm pretty much done with that. That's good to go. I am gonna go back and change this though one more time. Let's make it like 6.5 inches. Oh, it's a little bit better now. Alright, so back to my reference level for this last little piece. We want it to stay with these lines still on the inside of the chair. We want it to flex with that. And if I go to 3D, there's my chair.
Sweet.
The last thing I gotta do is just apply parameters. And the good thing about creating like, you know, one shape together, like these cushions are one shape, is I can add one parameter to it. If you need both cushions to be separate of each other, draw them separate. But I can go in here and say add parameter now. And so this is cushion, or cushions. Say okay, and this is add parameter. This is the seat body. Okay, and this is the legs, of course. So add parameter legs. Alright, so I don't even have to change materials here. I can just say save as, family. Make sure I'm on the desktop. I can say Carlstad chair. I might have to say 1 because I've already done it. And if I load this, well, I was going to load it into a project. Project's not open anymore. That's cool.
Yeah, if you have a project open, we should all things into it.
Let me just see if it'll do a new one real quick.
Wow.
Do a floor, because I want to show you that this will be placed on the floor. That you don't have to say it's a floor-based family to do that.
Yeah, it was just attached to the reference plane, which is at the same level as the floor, or the reference level.
So I got a floor in real quick. Go back to the chair. I'm gonna load it in the project. I'm gonna put a couple chairs in here. I'm gonna rotate RO. Maybe I'll rotate it just to face this one a little bit. Kind of nudge it down into place. Way too far. Maybe right there.
Yeah.
Alright, so now I just want to set up a view really quick to see, if I like it or not. Let's set up a view right here. Let me change my eye elevation a little bit more. I don't like that much sky in it. Pull it down a little bit. Alright, so there's both of our chairs. We got a realistic, they should be gray on wood floor. But we can change that because we're in the project
Gray on
now.
wood floor.
Gray on wood floor.
Sexy.
So edit type, we go in here, you see all the materials we added are still here. So the seat body could be, is there a fabric already loaded? You normally create stuff, but we're not going to. Maybe I want the legs to be wood. I like that cherry, so maybe we'll do that cherry again or something. And then I want the cushions to be the same fabric. You could always do them different. And say okay, and they change. That's that realistic.
It's a crazy fabric.
That's a weird fabric. Yeah, that's an ugly fabric in the realistic mode. I haven't really found a good use for this realistic mode yet.
It just makes things worse. But
The floors look great.
yeah, kind of repetitive.
The chair looks crappy. That's why I
At
always
least you can kind of tell exactly what they
I end up doing this instead, the shaded with edges or the consistent colors, either one. But anyway, just to show you without rendering it that all those did change.
Yeah.
Cool. But I do want to show you what they look like when you finish. I basically copied what we see here, and what you see is this. So those chairs are finished. That's the Carlstad chair. The proportions are way better on these, I think, even than that one. And then you can do weird stuff, like I just, did a little revolve and called it a pillow.
Yeah.
They look like frisbees, is what everybody was saying, but you can, if you spend more than 3 seconds on it,
Just set some frisbees in my chair real quick.
yeah, you can make it look like anything. So, I mean, you can even throw like a blanket over the back of it with a sweep or, something like that. I have a family on the website right now that, if I go to the website, I can show you real quick. Go to here and go back to Revit. This family actually has water coming out of the sink. So, I mean, you can do stuff like that just to give it a little bit more dimension. Not hard. Just think about it for a second. It's really not that hard. That's pretty much all we were going to cover. The next class, I guess we can show you what we're doing in that. So ignore Tuesday for some of you, but the next class is going to be all about setting up views.
Yeah.
So 3D views, section boxes, 3D callouts, diagramming. Some people say you can't. Me and Jeremy beg to differ. So he'll show you some.
It's going to be essentially demonstrating. So we've done our design. We developed it with some custom families and stuff you're seeing here, and now it's about showing all that stuff off with the demonstrating. And so most of that involves 3D views. So there's also ways of diagramming as well, and playing around with your visibility graphics and things like that to get filter out some stuff, highlight some things, and then get some nice renderings going as well. So
that's it. Yeah, exploded axons. There's no exploded axon button in Revit, but we'll show you a workaround that looks pretty sexy.
yeah, these are our techniques.
Playing with visibility graphics, like I said, best practices for renders. Don't waste your time. He's going to show you what you should be rendering at, especially in Studio. Then we'll do stuff, a little bit of this. We did material editing a little bit today. He's going to show you how to export stuff properly. That deals with the line work, how to get it to all these formats so you can go into AutoCAD or 3ds or Photoshop and just fix it really quick.
As well as scales and things like that. Make sure it's the right scale when you export and stuff like that.
So as always, I want to go back to the forum and say, for those of you that are watching this, go to the forum, create a username and password, and this has only been in the website maybe 2 weeks, maybe, and we've got a few people posting around in it asking questions. Here's your section. If you're not listening to these webinars from us, we're not going to answer the questions in this section. If you just happen to hear about this forum, or you were looking over your friend's shoulder as he was watching these webinars, here's your section. This is people that paid, so they get kind of first choice for right now. And then this is all the other general questions. Here's architecture and all things design related. And then I added a newer section down here at the bottom. It's general questions and feedback. We need feedback from everybody. We're not running dry on ideas, but we need to know heading into this semester how to make any studio environment a little bit easier to deal with. And if y'all say, look, we just need really crazy families created, then I can spend the next week or so only doing families. But if you say, well, we need more screencasts, then let us dedicate this last week before school starts back, or last week and a half before school starts back, to just screencasts, getting little tidbits that people kind of mess up with, little short 5-minute, 10-minute videos. Give us some ideas. What do you want the website to become? Without your feedback, the website can't become anything. Even if you say, well, I figured out a new layout for y'all guys, here it is, then do it. Because we kind of left the layout how it is. It's kind of boring. We still need to put, like a login and stuff up here in the top. Here's some of our advertisers. If you haven't gotten this book yet, please get this book. Click this link.
Yeah. Just help us help you is what we're trying to go for here.
Yep. We're students, not professionals.
We're all learning together.
We don't know everything that everyone needs all across the world. We only know what Southern Poly kids need because that's where we're from. That's about it. So, until next time, this is Art Design Labs again. This is Jeremy and Adam, and everybody take it easy. Have a good afternoon, week, and year.
Yep. Thanks, guys.